It's crazy to me, but what I'm going to say has become an unpopular opinion. So-called adult entertainment could scarcely exist if there weren't a steady supply of people who were abused as children and who were skilled at shutting down their inner wisdom, their sensitivity, their goodness, so that other people could use them for so-called pleasure. Many people will argue with me here and say that working in a strip bar is just self-expression or empowerment or just a job, but it's one of many ways that manipulative people, or those they have manipulated, like to normalize an obviously demoralizing and harmful way of treating people. If it is so empowering as people say, then why is it that 90% of the women who are involved in sex work have been sexually abused as children? I'm sorry, but the connection is obvious. Something is shattered during early abuse that can send their whole lives on a terrible trajectory. Researchers have noted that a third of women who do this type of work, including stripping, have dissociative identity disorder. More than half of them have borderline personality disorder, and 60% of them have had at least one major depressive episode. That doesn't sound like something that's working in their lives to me. And yes, there were underlying problems before, but the healing doesn't come when sex work is the solution. It isn't just driven by trauma. It's a bonfire of new trauma, and there's abuse and vulnerability to assault and exploitation that continue to happen. And it can do mortal damage to a person's ability to have close and committed relationships, the kind that it takes to be happy in life, to be secure, to be able to raise kids in a way that the kids turn out safe and okay and not traumatized. So with all that, my letter today is from a woman I'll call Millie, and she writes this. Hi, crappy childhood fairy. I recently decided to end a relationship, and I'm not sure if I did the right thing. I'm 32 years old, and I've never been in a serious relationship that lasted more than a few months, although I've always wanted one. Okay, I'm circling that. I'm going to come back to that. I've got my pink pencil here. I'm circling that because it's very significant that you've always wanted a serious relationship. I have debilitating abandonment issues because my dad was absent for most of my life. He was also basically a con man and lied to my mom about money a lot. He would pretend to go out and work each day, but didn't actually have a job. So dishonesty, money issues there. Okay. The house I grew up in went into foreclosure twice during my childhood, and it was horrible. I've been in therapy for about 12 years, and I'm very solitary and independent. I learned that I have an over-controlled personality. After COVID, when prices started going up on everything, my rent increased drastically, and I had to take a second job. After applying unsuccessfully for different jobs, I ended up becoming a stripper. I've been dancing on the weekends for over a year, and it has its ups and downs, but overall, I love it and the confidence and the financial security it brought me. It taught me to appreciate true love, not just romantic love, and to shoo away romantic breadcrumbs, shallow relationships, and avoidant men. I'm a little confused what the connection is there, how stripping actually taught you about true love. I don't get it, but okay. I felt comfortable being single and proud of myself for making money. Of course, it can be rough at times, and gritty things do happen in adult entertainment, but overall, I feel within the last year that I grew into myself. Then I met a man online when I wasn't looking who instantly became smitten with me. Instant smitten, trouble. And we fell for each other very quickly. What drew me to him the most is that he has a young daughter, and he's always spending time with her, and he loves her so much. Well, that's concerning. He seemed like everything I wanted in a partner and more. He was funny and kind, and he was always giving me thoughtful gifts. He lives about 4 to 5 hours from me, and he would make the effort to drive to my city, and he would show up with flowers. He told me his mom was a dancer and that he respected how hard I was working. Now, I read this letter through before, and I know where this is going, and I think that's very Freudian, that his mom was a dancer, and he told you that he respected this. Because he doesn't, does he? After dating so many avoidant men, I felt so lucky to have him. About 1.5 months into the relationship, he started to act a little distant, but I chalked it up to him being on a trip with his daughter and wanting to focus on her. But when he came back, we were finally able to talk, and at last it came out that he actually hates that I strip, and he considers it cheating. He basically did a hard 180-degree turn on this and started getting very combative. And this escalated to him yelling at me and saying vulgar things about my job. He repeatedly accused me of stripping for attention and to be on other men. No matter how much I tried to tell him that I was in it for the money and the scheduling flexibility, I have an autoimmune disease that causes chronic fatigue, so it's not really possible for me to adhere to a strict schedule. Also, hourly part-time jobs would pay significantly less. Okay, so you've got your whole rationale why it has to be this type of work. He doesn't like it. He's taking it personally. I think that he's not right or handling this wrong. He's only been dating you 1.5 months. He doesn't get to tell you what to do. But here's what happened, okay? We went back and forth fighting each other for 2 weeks. He became so scary when he was angry. At one point, he came to my apartment for 2 days to try to spend time together and repair things, but we ended up in such a nasty fight that I was scared I would have to call the police on him. All right, right there, that's actually where a relationship is supposed to end. We'll talk about that. So there was absolutely nothing I could say to him to make him see my side of it, no matter how much I tried to reassure him that stripping is just a job. We even share locations with each other on our phones. Really? It's so early to do such a thing. So he could always see that I was staying at the club and never leaving with customers. Oh dear, he's being controlling. He wanted me to never set foot in there again and to instead work for his business. And he promised me he'd pay more than what I was making dancing. He does run a successful painting business. At one point, he started to compromise and say that I could dance at a different club, which doesn't allow customers. Gosh, he really wants to be with you, but he actually just cannot accept what you're doing. And so if he were writing to me, I'd be like, stop trying to control another person that you really don't accept or approve of. But within 24 hours, he did another 180 and that he said I was cheating on him and that he was not going to start a future with a girl who's doing this kind of work. That I understand. He kept telling me to grow up and live in the real world, and sometimes he would take a nicer approach and say, let me be the guy to take care of you. This is a lot of enmeshment for 1.5 months into a relationship. But in the same breath, he'd go back to insulting me, and I always wanted to add, I have been sober for 6 years. Oh boy, that's big. Sober for 6 years. Good job. And he's addicted to smoking weed. He is high basically 24 hours a day. All right, what you doing, girl? What you doing? He wore me down to the point where I told him I would quit the job for him. I decided to trust him that he would take care of me financially. Please don't do that. Don't do that. You can't do that. It's somebody you barely know and who you feel like you need to call the cops on. But after a few weekends went by, I felt this void in my life, like I lost part of my identity. I told him this through tears on the phone, and he shut me down and basically told me to go cry to my therapist, that he didn't need to be my therapist about this. I decided to end the relationship after that, mostly for the way he treated me and talked to me. He kept saying that I'm emasculating him, cheating on him, disrespecting him as a man, trying to make him feel crazy and seeking attention. Yeah, he still thinks this is about him. He just he's not okay with who you are. Okay. He and a few other sources of input in my life are saying that he's madly in love with me. Okay, don't listen to anybody who says that. He's very strongly attached to you and trying to control the crap out of you and wants to take care of me, and that it's a bad idea for me to choose stripping because I'm losing out on a more beneficial long-term partnership in favor of quick cash. No, I think that the stripping is a bad option and this guy is a bad option. I think you have good options, but these two things going on are not good options. The friends are pointing out that he's a traditional man who will provide for me. No, he said that. You've known him 2 months. But in return, I need to do this for him. He needs to work on his communication and anger issues. He needs to work on, okay, I'll come back to that. Well, no, I'm going to say it now. We do that. We say that this person would be great if they would just work on he needs to work on his communication and anger issues because he's a bully and because he's potentially quite abusive and because he's very self-centered. And when he doesn't actually like who he's dating, he accuses you of emasculating him. And that's, kind of narcissistic, really. But a lot of my friends and family members are telling me he's an abusive manipulator and that the controlling behavior will only escalate from here. There you go. True. I'm sure the answer is somewhere in the middle. No, I don't think so. But I can't deal with a man I've known for 2 months yelling at me in my home. I think 2 months into the relationship is way too soon for him to be pressuring me like this. Yes, indeed. Good you ended it. I really don't know if my brain is now hardwired and addicted to the rush of quick money and that I'm falling for that addiction instead of making it work with this guy. Again, I want to take you out of this like either or. I think your brain is now getting damaged by what you're doing. That is my perhaps unpopular opinion. There's a lot of evidence that sex work is very, very damaging for everybody involved. And no matter how much people say it's like cool, it's groovy, it's liberating, it's just fun, it's not, or else we wouldn't, you wouldn't see these statistics that 90% of women who are in it have been sexually abused as children. It takes a certain kind of damage to your identity and your self-perception. It causes dissociation. And yes, money. There have been many times in history where people have had to sell sex to get by, but you don't actually have to. You're in a world where you have choices. So it's an odd choice. It's not a choice compatible with hoping to have a lasting relationship. It's just not. And so he didn't like it. He just sounds like somebody, he didn't really know how to frame his feelings of, he didn't like it. I'm glad he's not with you. He has a little girl. I don't think it's healthy for a little girl to grow up with somebody who's in sex work. I don't. And so you guys dodged a bullet, both of you. Just separate now. And I would just invite you, Millie, to start thinking about what you really want in your life. Of course you need money, but there are good ways to get money. There are healthy, sustainable ways to get money that don't involve the incredibly high risk of sexual assault, of abuse by employers, of demeaning situations, of the sense of being degraded, and of having to keep secrets about what you do and all the things that go with it. There's just so many reasons why I strongly recommend that people don't get involved in this work. And with that, I totally understand the dire need for money at times, forgiven, but there's a choice here. You have a choice. Pull back. Now, if a relationship is what you want, don't ever get into a relationship with a guy who shows you this kind of controlling behavior. So he helped you. He showed you this. That's not really the issue. And so there's this false thing, like, either you keep going with stripping or you go with this traditional man. He's not traditional. He's damaged. He's hurt. He's messed up. His mother was a stripper, okay? And so he has very strong feelings that are confused for him about that. He wants to love you, but he can't. He can't. And so neither of these options are good options, but there's like 1,000 options that are good options for you. So you say, all of this has made me feel ashamed and that I should just give up the idea of love or dating until my dancing career has ended. What a sad view there. I think you should give up the idea of doing sex work until you're healed enough to have the kind of relationship that you'd really like and that's fulfilling with somebody who loves and supports you. That's what I think. So yes, there's people out there who are going to say, no, it's fine, it's healthy. She can do that. I know some people who have a successful relationship, but it's very unlikely. And I come down pretty hard on the consumption of, from people who hire sex workers too. It's not just a harmless, victimless thing. It depends on people having a lot of damage done, through abuse when they were younger, or they wouldn't be in it. And that's how it is. There's a huge, very high level of addiction. And as I read to you at the beginning, a high level of depression, so much borderline personality disorder, so much dissociation. You can really exploit people who have been abused that way, and people do. So I get the feeling that you have a little dissociation going on where you're not quite attached to your feelings, you're not quite in touch with yourself. And I can't diagnose you, I don't know, but that's the feeling I get, that you're a little bit in denial about what's really going on here. So there's really good resources. I know you're in therapy, you've been in therapy 12 years, and I'm just gonna throw a little bit of question on that. After 12 years that you don't have more insight about this, kind of seems like, are there other resources that you could bring into your life, like maybe Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous? or something to do with money, or something to do with the way you grew up, like a 12-step program for the way you grew up, like ACA or Al-Anon, so that you could start to have friendship with other people who are working on themselves and start to have a frame of reference for what does it look like when you put down kind of a choice that's kind of wrecking your life and open up to a choice that would support your life, and start to be more tuned in, more attuned to the sensation of that. Like, this isn't working. This is working. This is what I really want. I think for traumatized people, this stuff easily gets lost. We just aren't that attuned. And it's not because we're bad people. It's because that has been like dulled in our senses and our awareness by a lot of trauma. So it's not your fault. It's not your fault it got like this, but I strongly urge you to just take responsibility for your life right now. Take the long view about where you would like to be in the long run. Because even if you loved stripping and it just worked great for you and you were willing to give up relationships, it's not going to be available to you as a job all of your life. Not when you're my age, and you still need money when you're my age. I talk in Crappy Childhood Fairy about what I call self-defeating behaviors. And one of them is abuse of sexuality. And that's where I would put sex work. It's abuse of your own sexuality, and it takes something away from your life. And it involves exploitation of many people, you know, what you become involved in. And so if you want to learn a little bit more about what I teach about self-defeating behaviors, because we all have them. If you have trauma, I mean, all people have them, but if you have trauma, they tend to show up a little more strongly, and it's a little harder to be aware of them. So I teach about self-defeating behaviors, and I have a free download where I just kind of list some of the common ones. And some of the other ones are like black and white thinking, which I think you might have had a little bit of there, or attraction to extreme authority figures, or difficulty around money. So these are some things that can be helpful to look at and just kind of see, is there one that you could be working on right now? So my list of self-defeating behaviors, a little, checklist to see if anything is affecting you now, you can download it for free right there. And I will see you very soon.